Honor of Mother's Day here. And the wind beneath my wings, many of us had mothers that were probably the wind beneath our wings, that person that encouraged us. Perhaps not. Perhaps it was a dad. Perhaps it was an auntie or a neighbor or friend that was that encouragement that we sought. And if you did have that experience, honor that, celebrate that today in this idea of motherhood and nurturing. And if we didn't have it, and some of us did not maybe have that experience, I'd like to honor that sacredness of mother from the standpoint of bringing life, because each of us from that standpoint had a mom that brought us life. And whatever has happened past that has been part of the journey. But the birth part, that sacred birthing part that brought us all forward, I honor and say Happy Mother's Day to everyone. So thank you for being with us today. We are going to continue our month-long series. It's all about consciousness. We started this last week, but we started off and we talked about how Dr. Ernest Holmes says in the Science of Mind text that consciousness is mental awareness. Now he goes on to talk about a lot of other things about consciousness, but the first two words are mental awareness. And then when we look at other resources, we find that it's awareness or perception of something, awareness by the mind of itself in the world. So sort of understanding where we are in relation to all that is in the world. And it's true, as we talked last week also, that a lot of people are studying what is consciousness. And there's not a cut and dried definition, because it depends on which perspective you're looking at it from. In the spiritual or theological, we look at God and soul and spirit and those types of things. Medically, we look at conscious versus unconscious, comatose, and is there awareness in that state? We have cosmic consciousness, which is that overarching, large, philosophical sort of thinking about it. So there's many different perspectives and ways to look at it. And we're going to just be looking at it this month and looking at the different perspectives and what do we think? What do we think? Because isn't that really what it's about, is what do we think about consciousness? And our question is, who are we? And that has to do with this thing called consciousness. We're all born with it. We all come in with it. It's this thing called life. It's not our body. In some cases, it's not inside of our body. Our consciousness can roam, so to speak, in our mind and our thoughts and the way that we can experience life beyond just the physical form of our bodies. So it's an interesting aspect to think about and to explore. So this week we're going to move into, last week we talked about what are you looking at, and through the magic of Carson and Joe, we now have our videos up on our website. Yeah, so if you missed last week, you can log on to scottsdalecsl.org and you can watch the talk from the previous week. And we're not live streaming, but we are going to be posting those talks for you. If you're traveling over the summer, you can stay in touch. It'll be kind of fun. So thank you to Joe and to Carson for all your work on that. And so the idea last week was what we focus on expands. What we focus on expands, not necessarily in size, but in our awareness of it. And I gave you some tips and tools about how we could use and apply that. And then we started a 30-day mental challenge. A 30-day mental challenge where we were using the work of William James as presented in the Science of Mind magazine from November, where he talked about directing our attention to what is good and useful and ignoring the rest. And that's that Science of Mind concept of focusing on what we want to see more of in our life and turning away from that which we don't want to see. We talked a little bit about that. So how's it working? For those of you that signed your forms and took the challenge last week, how's it working? Yeah? I didn't hear from anybody. You can email me, remember, Reverend Jill at scottsdalecsl.org. I got a lot of practice this week in stop it, right? Stop it and redirect my awareness into the positive and out of the negative. So it's always fascinating when we start observing our life and seeing how we live these truths, how we live them. So I invite you, if you have not started that, to join us in that process and focus on what is good and useful and ignore the rest. Ignore the rest. Okay, today we're going to move into celebrating the divine feminine in all of us. And if you read the email yesterday, gentlemen, this is for you too, because there is this feminine energy in all of us. And it's based on the premise that God is all there is. And we all come from one source, that one source. And as such, that one source has everything in it that it gives to its creation. So we all have all of that masculine and feminine energy in us. Now, Dr. Holmes tells us in The Science of Mind, I go back to the 1926 edition periodically because I find sometimes the languaging there is a little less complex than some of what we maybe find in the 1938 revision. And in the 1926, he defines feminine. He actually defines it in that one, and he says it's the universal medium or soul. And if you see our Science of Mind symbol, it's that middle section. Remember, in the creative process, we have the top section is the seed or the idea, the center is the soil or the law, and the bottom is the body or the manifestation portion or the plant portion. So this idea of feminine is in that center receptive portion. And that's because it's receptive to the spirit and is impregnated with divine ideas. It gives birth to the idea of the spirit in us, therefore the feminine principle of nature. So it's this idea of receptivity. And we all have that, don't we? We all have that. We are impregnated, if you will, with divine ideas all the time. Those aha moments, those out of the blue things. I personally want to know where this blue stuff is. We're out of the blue. I get great stuff from there. You know, we want more of that, right? Out of the blue. It came. It came. I actually had an experience of that just yesterday morning. I've had an opportunity presented to me that I've been dancing with, maybe I could call it that, and trying to decide, do I do it? Do I not do it? If I do it, how do I do it? If I don't do it, why don't I do it? And just doing that whole crazy dance of trying to make a decision. Ever anybody been there? What do I do with this? And it goes around in the hamster wheel in our mind for a while. So I've been dancing with this, and I got really focused on it, of course, right? About this big. And in my meditation, though, yesterday, I had the most clear voice of reason speak to me, and I'm going to read it because I had to write it all down. It was like a novel. It says, "This is just the appetizer portion of the main course of the great entree of good that is being prepared in the kitchen of life for you." Woo! Is that awesome? That's out of the blue. That's Spirit speaking. And oh my, it completely transformed my thinking around this opportunity. It's just the appetizer. It's not the main course. Is that exciting? I mean, I'm excited. It's very exciting. It's very exciting to have this type of thing come forward. Now, if I had remained in my small focus, forgetting infinite possibilities, if I had decided to blow off my meditation yesterday because I was busy, right? Any of those things, I'd have missed this. I'd have missed this. But because I took the time to go into my meditative practice and to be still, to be in that stillness, and to let go of having to have it be my way, I got a gift. What a powerful gift, and it's a gift I can share with you because now you can think about that in your life when you're thinking about things. Maybe this is just the appetizer, right? Maybe it's just the appetizer. So fun stuff, fun stuff. Dr. Holmes goes on to tell us that we come from and are created from unity. Now think about that. We come from unity. How could we be anything less than that? He says that we are both male and female and have within us both attributes of reality. We have two distinct types of expressions of that unity in man and in woman, but they are types of one fundamental principle, the spiritual energy of creation. Now, I want to, this is my disclaimer here. I'm not talking about sexuality and sexual preference when I'm talking about this. We're up in the higher reaches of spiritual consciousness, not in the physicality of things. So we're talking about the spiritual realm of energetics, of energy. We're not talking about this physical body form of ours when I talk about the male and the female, okay? So just make sure we're clear there. So I want us to use the example of a flower garden. Found a beautiful picture of a flower garden, and yet each one is unique. Even though we've got some flowers that are of the same type, each one of those, if you looked closely, would be very different, wouldn't they? And yet look how beautiful it is with all of the various colors and things that are there. Now imagine if they were fighting with each other. Imagine if they were arguing with each other. Imagine if they were pushing each other out because they wanted that land. Imagine. And yet we see examples throughout our world today in the news media showing us how we're doing that ourselves. How we're doing that. We're not living in our unity. We're not living in our wholeness. We're fighting and arguing with each other. Ernest Holmes again, he's a wise man. He has lots to say this morning. He says the sense of opposition must forever be removed from consciousness which perceives unity. Must be removed from a consciousness that perceives unity, because God is all there is. There's no separation. There is no separation. Another empowering idea within this, for me, has been this concept of win-win. The concept of win-win. When we can be in conversation with each other and think, how can this not be a yes or a no? How can it be a third way, a fourth way, a fifth way? How can it be win-win? And my moving experience provided me lots of opportunities to practice this. When the world of effects dealt me up things that were not my preference perhaps in that moment, but seemed to be someone else's preference in that moment. So I got to look at this, and I actually used a process of making a list of what they wanted, what I wanted, what the other person wanted, and how each of those could combine to come up with some other way that would serve us all, that could be win-win, where nobody really lost. Where nobody lost. There's no competition. There's no opposition. How can it be good for the title company to close early? How can it be good for the lender to close early, even though it's a little bit of a hassle for them? How can it be good for the seller to close early? You know, how could we get this to be good for everybody? And how could it be good for me to close later? How could I step away and look at it to be a later closing than the urgency that I was looking for? So looking at all of that from the perspective of we're all one and we're all here for the win is a very powerful place, because then we can step into that field of infinite possibilities. We talk about it, we say we live there, we say we believe in it, but step into it and live from that place. I don't know how, but I know there's infinite possibilities when I open up to them, and something can come from out of the blue. Something can come from out of the blue. My solution can come to me at that point. We have had an opportunity in our community just this week as well to look at this idea of win-win. And I want to share that with you because it's been a powerful discussion for me. And in January, when we had our small group leaders come forward, we were talking about this laundry list of various community groups that we could have here at Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living, which ones would be supported, which ones might not be, and that sort of thing. And from that group of leaders, we began to narrow it down. And when we got to one of the groups that was a women's group, we had a powerful conversation around this about Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living is about community. It's about connection. It's about oneness. It's about walking our talk of oneness in the world, creating a world that works for all. And for this group of leaders, it felt like a women's group exclusively would not be in keeping us in alignment with that. So we decided and consented on basically in that group that we weren't going to have that type of exclusive groups in our community at this time. So fast forward to last week when I announced Reverend Glenn coming on board with us as a staff minister. And one of the things that I shared with you was that Reverend Glenn has a vision in his ministry for creating a men's group. I was called on that. So we've had some powerful conversations around, okay, where's our integrity here? How is this different from our women's group that we said we were not going to do? So Reverend Glenn and I have had some powerful conversations this week and some work around this, and realizing that, okay, this is his vision of his ministry, is to do something like this. What's our third way? To not say yes, not say no, but say, what's our third way? What's another way that his vision of ministry can be made manifest and serve this community that is in that field of infinite possibilities, that is not going to be exclusionary, that still keeps us connected as one in community? So it's powerful work, is it not? Yeah, it's powerful work. So it's been a joy and a pleasure. I appreciate those that brought it forward to us to look at. And Reverend Glenn and I have this opportunity on the very front end of our ministry time together to be able to experience this and work with it and start working through it. We are taking it into prayer and our meditations. We'll do some visioning around it. And we'll see what emerges. We'll see what Spirit's idea of this is for this community. So stand by on that. Stand by on that. What I do know is that Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living is a divine idea in the mind of God. It came forward that way. It came through in vision, and it has been manifested through not only me, but each and every one of you that as you have come and participated in this community, and we have allowed it to organically unfold through us, and we will continue to do so in all ways, and with Reverend Glenn and his ministry unfolding with us. So as we begin to think about all of these things that we've talked about today, as we begin to think about that and hold that higher view of spiritual consciousness and our mental awareness beyond this physical, purely physical realm, as we begin to do that, we can step into that realization of oneness. We can start to step into that and start to feel that and see that and understand the possibility of peace. But it starts within us. It comes from within us. And as we begin to recognize, too, that it's possible to expand our own consciousness, our own awareness, we must realize that we do live completely from the inside out. That's becoming our tagline here at Scottsdale Center, is that we live from the inside out, successful living from the inside out. And this teaching is all about that. What I've come to really realize is that there is no thing, nothing, no one in my life that is not there because it's in my consciousness. Nothing. And I invite you to take that into contemplation. See if that's true for you as well. See if that's true for you as well. It's easy to blame what we see outside of ourselves. But when we can recognize from within that it's our consciousness, then we can have an effect on that which we see reflected back. So what can we do? I'm the application lady, right? It's like, okay, how do we apply this stuff in our life this week? So I've got a couple of tips for us today. The first is that we recognize through our understanding of our oneness that our daily spiritual practice of meditation is not just about me. It is about we. It is about we. Because meditation, by definition, is receptive, right? It's opening in the stillness and being receptive, listening to the still small voice, listening to our soul, listening to spirit within. It's a receptive place. And when we are in our meditations and we get this divine idea, divine guidance, insight, inspiration, intuition, wisdom, that helps us to change, like my aha that I received. It shifted me, it changed me. And when I change, I can change my world. When you change the world. It starts within. According to David Nicole of the Shift Network, he says ancient spiritual traditions and modern science are finding common ground as scientific research is proving the efficacy of prayer and meditation in both promoting positive benefits in health, which we know that, right? And influencing events in the outer world, an emerging field known as subtle activism is advancing the notion that consciousness-based practices like meditation and prayer may indeed play a crucial role in supporting change in the world. So we're continuing to prove our principles in the world of science. And that's, if there's nothing that you do, if you don't listen to anything else I say, please continue your meditation practice. It's important, not just for you, but for me, for all of us, for our planet, for our world. It's so, so very important. So important. And the second thing, Science of Mind tagline, change your thinking, change your life. You've heard it, right? Ernest Holmes said that. Change your thinking, change your life. My thought for you today is change your thinking. Change your thinking. Focus on thoughts of healing, helpfulness, supportiveness, coming at life from that standpoint, living in the affirmative, rather than saying no. Know anybody that leads with that? You have a suggestion and the first thing he says, no. I know people like that, right? It's how we start the conversation, no. Well, maybe we started to go, hey, help me understand that. Tell me more. And if we can, in our own mind, say, this is Spirit speaking to me. This is a divine idea coming through this person. And they may not know how to express it quite eloquently yet. But if I keep asking questions, maybe I can draw it out of them. Maybe I can draw that powerful message out of them that Spirit is planting in their heart. Help me understand more. Tell me more. Isn't that more empowering? And don't be sitting there thinking, okay, I'm wasting my time. This is just crazy. I don't need to be thinking about this. Anybody ever done that? Thinking about what you're going to say, how you're going to overcome whatever it is they're saying because they're not making sense? Yeah, our minds work that way sometimes. But to sit in that power, and let them know they're truly being heard, that you're truly interested. Tell me more about this idea. Help me understand. I remember what William James said, New Thought is a religion of healthy-mindedness. Healthy-mindedness. If we can keep that in mind in this process. Join that 30-day challenge. That's part of this as well. If you haven't joined it, do so. We didn't post that on the internet, on the website, did we? Okay, we've got the slide. We'll post the form up there so you can download and print that, and then you can, if you want to join us, if you haven't, you can do that. And take 30 days and focus on the positive and affirmative in your life. So these are two relatively simple ways. You hear me say them all the time, don't you? Focus on what you're thinking about, know what you're thinking about, take it into meditation, broken record. It's only because it works and because I love you. Okay. So these are ways, though, to expand our consciousness and to change for good on our planet. To change for good. To change for good. And it's a core of the Science of Mind teaching. It's a core concept of the Science of Mind teaching is oneness, wholeness, unity. So let us decide today to become that doorway of healing consciousness. Become the doorway of healing consciousness that the world so desperately needs. We have that opportunity We have the teaching. We have the tools. And I'll leave us today with a quote from our Science of Mind 1938 edition. "The time is now. The place is where we are, and it is done unto us as we believe. And I believe we can change the world." Would you join me as we anchor this in prayer? So how good it is to recognize that there is only one power, one presence, one infinite life, and that life is God. It is all that there is. There's never been anything else. There is nothing else now, and there will never be anything else more than. For as this infinite source of wisdom and truth and power and love and peace, harmony, it is that source of all that exists. And it is so delighted to give all of that to its own creation, and that it is in, through, and as me, as its creation, as my life, expressing as it in form. And I know that this power and this presence that is within me is within each and every one of us here in this room today and beyond, knowing that we are all sourced of this divine substance, this infinite energy, this divine male and female energy of the one, this unity, this wholeness that we are. And I know that absolute wholeness and perfection that each and every one of us is. And from that place of knowingness, from that place of knowing that we are the unity of God, I speak my word for and about each one of us this day, knowing, claiming, and accepting in this moment that whatever might be on our hearts this day, whatever desire might be blossoming in our heart, I know that it is sourced of the divine, and that as we feed and water and nourish that it comes forth into full orbed expression in our life, and that we can see it reflected back in crystal clarity to us as those desires of our heart implanted by Spirit. And I also speak a word of blessing this day on our planet for those fighting the wildfires in Canada, and for those that are struggling in any way, just simply lifting them up into this higher realm of consciousness and knowing the truth of their being, and knowing that we here at Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living are a place in the world of peace, a place in the world of empowerment. And how good it is to know this truth, and how grateful I am to know of the manifestation of this prayer. As I just simply release it into the action of law, knowing, claiming, and accepting that it is done, it is so. And we anchor this together by affirming, and so it is.